Malice at the Palace, Netflix Untold documentary. Man, I watched it the first day it came out. Ironically, I didn't even know it was out. I just watched it, and I saw the whole thing, and then after I went just binge watching on YouTube interviews from Jermaine O'Neal because I wanted to see how his career turned out after Indiana. I saw his interview with All the Smoke podcast. It was a great interview. I want to ask you guys this. Was the punishment from the NBA out of line to Ron Artest, Jermaine O'Neal, and Steven Jackson? And do you believe that the Pacers team, that team, would have won the NBA championship that year if the punishments had not been so harsh?
Okay, I'm going to start by saying this. Jermaine O'Neal's a great guy. You know, he's really cool, down to earth, really good player, very underrated player in our era of basketball. You know, people tend to forget those early 2000 teams like the Kings, the Pacers, Detroit, you know. Really good player. I think they kind of like during that time, as you watched it, during that time, the media was destroying players at that time, calling them thugs. You know, they're disrespecting their characters, you know, basically saying they're thugs in the NBA. So I feel like the NBA just did that to kind of send a message to the media that we're with you on this side. But I think it was a little too harsh because, you know, if you watch the tape, the Pacers didn't start it. You know, people threw a drink at Ron Artest. Somebody threw a drink, and then they threw another drink when he went up there and ran down on the person who threw the drink at first. And, you know, their players, you know, being that they're brothers, they work with each other every day, see each other every day. You know, they shower together, they play together. No, pause.
You just had to throw that in there, right?
I'm sorry.
This guy, huh?
That's what came to his mind.
They play together, you know, they work out together. They basically spend their lives seeing each other every day all year. So you see, if me and Drew on the same team, we're on the same team, and I see him get a drink thrown on him, and he's about to get jumped, I'm going to run down by any means. You know what I'm saying? Steven Jackson, I feel like he did the right thing, ran down and helped his brother. Jermaine O'Neal, thank God he tripped because he looked like he was going to knock bro out.
Oh,
that was like a Superman punch. So I think they was a little too harsh because, you know, you see your brothers fight, you jump in regardless. And like I said, it was a hostile environment. Detroit gets that since the 80s and the 90s, Detroit's been like that. I don't think they would have won the chip, though. You know, I think Detroit, and that was the year that the Lakers went.
San Antonio.
I think Detroit had the perfect personnel to guard guys like Shaq and Tim Duncan. You know what I'm saying? They had Ben, they had Rasheed. I think Jermaine O'Neal's a really good defender, but when you have both Wallaces down there, you know, Tim don't get no plays off. You know what I'm saying? I think Jermaine O'Neal, you know, he would have been good for Tim, but I don't think he was defensively. He was as great as Ben Wallace, as great as Rasheed Wallace.
He was a great defender.
Oh yeah, he was great, but I don't think as like the combination of Ben and Rasheed, I don't think he was as great to really, you know, keep up. And not to mention, you know, the guard player, Detroit, Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton. I don't think Indiana, you know, Reggie Miller, he was great, but defensively, their backcourt.
They went to 7 the year before, I believe, or 6.
6. It was 6. I think, you know, Detroit just had 1 through 5 great defenders that was able to, you know, make Tony work, make Manu work, make Tim Duncan work. I think Ron Artest would have made Manu work. You know, Tim Duncan, Jermaine O'Neal would have made Tim work, but I think Tony Parker would have probably had a field on Reggie or whoever. I think Jamal Tinsley was the point guard. He would have had a field day on those two guys.
Now, does the score of the game impact your thought process at all? Indiana smacked them, 97-82. No? Okay. No, I'm just wondering.
No, I use nah.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, for me, this is tough because I definitely think that the penalties were too harsh. You know, this guy obviously was egged on by a heckling fan who was not involved in the situation at all, and he's the one that made it erupt into what it ended up being. And ironically, when the drink's thrown and Ron charges the stands, he doesn't even go and get the guy that actually threw the drink. And he's out there skating free for God knows how long. But regardless of that, you look at the fact that Artest actually did go into the stands. Now, there's a certain type of way that you're in the NBA, you need to hold yourself. Listen, you know in the NBA that there are going to be fans that are going to be cutthroat, 100% about that.
Especially Detroit.
Especially Detroit, that has been a place that has been brutal for as long as it's been around, especially the Pals. Then did they knock it down after that?
The Palace of the Auburn Hills?
Yes. I know it's gone now.
Not right after. I'm not sure if it was
It's
right
not
after.
right after, but it was. I think it was after Chauncey
It's
them left.
the history of that building itself is just a really tough place to play in. And you look at what happened to Ron Artest. Ron Artest took himself out of the equation. Ron Artest put himself on the scoreboard, tried to meditate to get himself at peace because Ben Wallace was the one that started the fight. Then this fan goes and throws the drink at him.
2017,
that's when they closed it down. So that was a decent while after. So,
but now when they stopped playing there, I don't believe.
September
what?
2027.
They stopped playing there? Go on.
So, regardless of that, so now Ron's trying to take himself out of this, but where he messes up is when he goes into the stands. You can't do that. Do I think he should have been suspended? Yes. Do I think it should have been for a full season? Absolutely not. Because then by doing that, you're allowing fans to continue for years on end, which has already been happening, which we're seeing in today's NBA, for them to continue heckling these players. And we're not protecting these players at all. But of recent, for sure, we definitely have been more mindful of our players. We're banning fans from coming to the arenas for life, which I definitely think is a good idea. But this one fan who started the whole incident kind of got away scot-free. And the NBA completely took the blame and put that on the players. But again, Artest went into the stands. Steven Jackson went into the stands. And as you mentioned, Steven Jackson did what any other normal human being should do. Back up his man. Simple as that. He did what he had to do. Jermaine O'Neal, same thing. Jermaine O'Neal had a chair thrown at him. At a certain point, it's self-defense. It's getting to a point where fans are throwing drinks, fans are throwing popcorn, fans are throwing whatever they can have access to. The NBA completely smacked these players in the face by giving them these lengthy suspensions. Do I think they deserve the suspensions? Yes. We've seen players get suspended for getting into a regular fistfight on the court, let alone going into the stands and getting into a fight with fans who obviously are in less physical condition than these pro athletes. Artest is probably stronger than every single fan in that building. Same with Steven Jackson. Same with Jermaine O'Neal. They have a clear physical advantage over these guys. It was no surprise that when this dude came onto the court and tried to size up Ron Artest, that Ron Artest put him down. It should have been no surprise that was going to happen. But these fans were the ones that really started to bring out the worst in these Pacers, and it gave the Pacers a bad look, and it ruined their season. Could they have won the championship? Maybe. They definitely had the roster to do it. They definitely had good chemistry around them. Ron Artest was an unbelievable player. Jermaine O'Neal was averaging 24 that season. He was amazing. Steven Jackson was that missing piece that really glued them together, and they handled the soon-to-be champions that season. So it's definitely possible they could have won the championship. But obviously, you hand out these suspensions. It ruined their entire mojo, and the rest is history. And it's unfortunate the way it happened, but I do believe that it's a tough situation. But in the grand scheme of things, the suspensions were way too long.
April 10th, 2017.
Okay.
September was the concert, the end of the concert.
I think the fan insinuated the riot by throwing the cup at him, but I do think Ron Artest deserves fault.
Oh,
not for going up into the stands, but because Jamal Tinsley was the one who, when the game was out of reach already, told Artest, you can get your foul now.
True.
Ron Artest fouled Ben Wallace hard, and that's what started this entire situation. So let's be honest, Artest has some problems.
Oh, yeah, that's clear.
He has, and I hope he's been getting through them, but he's admitted to it. He has mental problems. He has anxiety. He's bipolar. He's admitted it. And I'm glad that he's getting the help that he needs right now. At the time, we know that there was a stigma around mental health. There's not as open of a conversation now as there was back then. Now, it's normal to talk about it. Back then, it wasn't. You were looked at as less of a man if you talked about it. If you were a man and you talked about those type of things. But Ron Artest was not totally up here, right? So he got the foul when you didn't need to do anything. You were already going to win the game. And also, I think Rick Carlisle deserves some blame because he left the players in the game even though the game was out of reach. But that happens all the time all across the league. I think that's what started the entire the brawl.
That's a good point.
But the fan threw the cup. And Ron Artest also, after he got into that altercation with Ben Wallace, he went to the scorer's table. Was he somebody that wasn't looking for any trouble? He was not. He was laying down like he was on a couch at home. He was showing signs of disrespect. He meant for that to be taken in a disrespectful way.
Yeah, you think so?
I do think so.
Okay.
I think that is what led the fan to throw that cup. Is the fan justified? Absolutely not. But I believe that's why a fan that is drunk, that is at the stadium drunk, that is at the arena is like, okay, this guy is out of line. I'm going to throw this cup now. And then Artest obviously went into the stands. My problem with the punishment is that at the time, we have to throw in context to how the NBA was viewed. Allen Iverson was the face of the NBA. He was wearing chains. He was wearing baggy clothing. He was talking in slang. He was listening to hip hop. He was showing his roots, showing where he's from. The NBA had a image of being too hip, being too, let's just call it what it is, being too black. They had an image of that. And the media destroyed the NBA for that said image. Back then, the media was completely racially insensitive. And because of this brawl, it gave the media more firepower to say, this is what hip-hop does. This is what these baggy clothes does. This is a bad example for our children. You see what hip-hop is doing to our urban communities and to these teams. These players aren't professionals. They're thugs. That word thug, we know, has racial connotations to it. Had those been hockey players, have those been white players, the word thug would have not been used.
Not at all.
But because they were black players, the word thug was used. And everybody in the media viewed those players in that light. David Stern had to make a business decision at that point. And that's where I feel like it goes into a deeper conversation with morality versus practicality, right? Because if David Stern was a moral guy, he would have waited for the detectives to, find out what's up. He would have waited to make a full-on decision. But because he was thinking of a practical sense, how can I save the NBA dollars? Well, my league right now has this bad image over it. These players have only insinuated this said image. In order to make this go away, I have to suspend these players. I have to give them a crucial punishment. Because to tell the truth, the first person to get punished is always the one that gets punished the harshest.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
He had to set an example. And that's what he did with these players. And that's when he also insinuated a dress code. You can't wear baggy clothes anymore. You can't be hip hop anymore. You have to come in, dress casually, dress nice. He basically whitewashed the NBA without having white players come into the NBA. That's what he basically did. And I think he put the business of the NBA first rather than being moral. And you could say it saved the NBA to a certain extent because the image of the NBA now, we know it's much more of a family-friendly environment. We have kids now that, are 9 watching the NBA that have Twitter accounts with their favorite players on it, So it definitely saved the league in that sense, but I was disappointed in how David Stern handled it because, like you said, he smacked the players in the face with that punishment. He blamed the players, and that also leads to another deeper conversation in when is it going too far for a fan? I mentioned this to you before the show.
Yep.
When fans go to games, they are adults that get to act like children for a couple hours. I buy a ticket. I can say what I want. I can do what I want. I can heckle these players and not expect punishment. And think about it. Back then, much less of a woke time than now. You can get away with so much back then. Now, you think about it more. You can go viral. Somebody can record you. There are a lot of things to think about. But even now, people don't care. The Kyrie Irving incident, what that Utah Jazz fan said to Russell Westbrook. There have been these type of incidents. So when is it too far for a fan? When are fans going too far? I definitely think in this situation, fans went too far, and more of the blame should go on the fans. I don't like how David Stern handled it, but I can understand it from the business perspective. But from a morality perspective, he was definitely in the wrong. But it's always the first person who bites the biggest bullet because You were the first one to do something. Now I have to make an example of you. Yep. Because, for example, like NFL, Ray Rice, that situation, never played in the NFL again. We have had players since Ray Rice get into domestic assault lawsuits.
On camera.
Yes. They haven't got banned from the NFL. The first guy is usually the one that bites the hardest bullet. And that was Ray Rice for the NFL. And I think it was the Indiana Pacers for the NBA. And they had to change the image of the league, and it started with these guys. But I do think they would have won the championship that year. Yeah. San Antonio.
San Antonio's too good, man. I don't know.
They would have beat San Antonio. Who would have handled Ron Artest? Who would have handled Steven Jackson?
Bruce Bowen, pardon me.
So what do you guys think, though? Where do you guys think you draw the line?
I mean, we say it's morally wrong.
In what sense do you mean? I'm sorry.
Draw the line for fans. What is going too far? What is just right?
I mean, people throw drinks now till this day. I remember Westbrook when he was in Utah, they was throwing popcorn and drinks at him one time.
You saw Trae Young these past playoffs.
Yeah, so it's like I just feel like it's just because it's Ron Artest and what he was going through. I don't think any other and not to mention there wasn't much security on the court at the time. You know, when Westbrook, they did it to him. He was around about 5-6 security guards who stopped him from being able to go up there.
That's a
with
fact.
Ron Artest, you know, he was kind of laying there by himself. There wasn't, like they said in the video, there was no cops.
Yeah.
There was like 2 cops there. There wasn't much security. I think now with the security we have throughout the arena, there isn't really going to happen. But at the same time, you got to respect players. I understand they may have beaten your team or they did something, but throwing stuff at them, you're kind of disrespecting them as a character because you wouldn't do that in the street if it's just y'all too. So I think that's where you draw the line.
The media has a lot to do with this and their inherent bias, and it happens today. Not in situations that we've seen back then, but for example, let's just say Kawhi Leonard. I'm just going to use him as an example. This past playoffs, he was dealing with an injury, or just use any player that deals with an injury. If they play bad in the playoffs, but they're hurt, the first thing these radio personalities will say is,
"Oh, you could have used Harden."
Not that. Oh, I mean, I could have. But the first thing these radio personalities would say is, he played bad. He's this. He's that. This is why he can't lead a team. And they will never mention that, to be fair, he was hurt.
Sounds like you.
No, doesn't. You talking about the LeBron thing?
Sounds like you.
LeBron wasn't hurt. He was coming back from an injury. It's different.
Well, didn't you call Dennis Schroeder trash and he just had COVID?
He is trash.
No,
he got $5 million. If it wasn't trash, someone would have given him bread.
Knock his money?
It's like, bro went from 80, what is it, 85, 90,
84?
something. Cost
well, you're an idiot
79.
for give him that.
No doubt. But who's the bigger idiot? Us or him?
Fair point.
Thank you. Go ahead, though.
I mean, you thought LeBron was going to. You thought LeBron was going to be Cleveland LeBron.
You did. Keep it 100. You definitely did.
My God,
in the playoffs.
Sue me, guys, for thinking that my favorite player was going to play well.
Bias.
Sue me. Yeah. No, duh.
But then he plays bad. Oh, it's because his ankle. Okay. So this
he didn't play bad.
Okay.
He didn't play like
below season averages. Yeah.
Season averages.
Goats get high standards.
25 points per game. No,
you know that.
Trash.
Goats get high standards.
He averaged 23.
No, it's 25.
No, we're talking about
in the
You're talking playoffs.
Yeah.
You said more
Goats get high
season.
standards.
You said season. So
No, I said it was below a season average in the playoffs.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I'm saying the first thing that these media personalities will say is, this is why he can't do this, and they'll ignore all this other context. And that's the same thing that happened here, right?
Yeah.
Because a lot of these guys, especially like the Fox News guys, were like, they already were painting the NBA in this light. So obviously this situation insinuated what they already felt even more. They had even more of a reason to double down on their opinion.
Yep.
They didn't mention the fans being crazy and it being a Friday night and a lot of them being drunk. They didn't mention the craziness of the fans. They only mentioned the players and how bad of an example they are. And I think that wasn't just Fox, that was everybody, because league-wide, every single outlet, they were saying the same exact thing in different ways. I think a lot of that has to do with it as well. And you got to think about it. At that time, not having social media, there is no outside influence other than mainstream media influencing your opinion.
Yep.
On social media now, we can watch a Skip Bayless or Nick Wright segment and go to social media and say, these guys are dumb. Back then, you don't have that outlet. You can probably say it to your like 2 friends, but really, there's no outside influence. You don't have that influence of opinions, of differences of opinions. So back then, it was much more of a targeted attack, I guess, on these guys' character.